take it home where you spread it around. If you don't like who's in there, vote them out. That's what election day is all about. And the biggest gun we got is called the ballot box. If you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. And she'll bring some new ones in, and they will start the show again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. It's a bunch of clowns you voted in. Election day is coming around again. And if you don't like it now, you can change it anyhow. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. We'll start the show again and bring some new ones in. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. And when we're done, we'll sing and dance and shout. Then we'll bring some new ones in, and we'll start the show again. But if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Texas. Thank you, Beto. All the way, buddy. We love y'all. Thank you.
This is a special presentation in our debate series. It'll be the last debate of the 2018 election season from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. The Mississippi runoff debate between the current appointed senator, who said in the debate she's only been there 6 months, Cindy Hyde-Smith, and Mike Espy. Mike Espy was a congressperson from Mississippi during the Reagan administration, and he, in fact, Mr. Thompson, I believe, has that seat now. He was the secretary of, first of all, let me just back up a second here. He was in his third term, I believe, and you'll hear it in the debate there. And he was appointed by William Jefferson Clinton as the Secretary of Agriculture. During his administration, there several things happened. A public corruption charge was levied against him. He resigned his position as the Secretary of Agriculture. Now you have to remember, in a rural state like Mississippi, being the Secretary of Agriculture was a very important position, a farm state, and he was able to leverage much influence, no doubt. But the machinations around the so-called corruption, if I recall, one was accepting Super Bowl tickets, etc. There was an extensive investigation at the time by the FBI, etc. There was a trial, and Mike Espy was acquitted. Not only was he acquitted, in this series, one of the cases went to the Supreme Court, and Scalia, a justice of the court, and late Justice Anton Scalia, with the majority of 9 justices, found that he had been incorrectly treated. So thus that was a high point of Hyde-Smith, but Hyde-Smith and her remarks about attending a lynching. Most troubling remarks, but there have been a lot of troubling remarks with her. We'll go to Paul Reed. He is a professor at the University of Alabama, but specialized in sociolinguistic history of Southern and Appalachian English varieties. He said that the phrase first appeared in written works in the U.S. in the mid-1800s, That was during the period of slavery, and that its usage peaked up during the civil rights era in the 20th century. He said the phrase had indeed once been used as an expression of regard. People would use the idiom to convey that they thought so highly of someone they would attend something as distasteful as a public hanging with him. But it's given its clear negative connotation. Professor Smith said that most people would not dare use the phrase in 2018, with the exception of Hyde-Smith. It has fallen so far out of favor, Professor Reed said in an interview, I cannot believe that someone would use that today. Michael Espy, he's a professor of history at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, who has written several books about lynching in the U.S., said the comment must be interpreted within the context of Mississippi. History of lynchings. Hyde-Smith's remark is curious and could certainly be read as referring to Mississippi's white supremacy history. Professor Fipe said on Monday that even as an expression of regard, that radicalized history context in Mississippi is important for understanding such a remark. Hyde-Smith made a remark while a campaign stop in Lee County, where at least 2 people were killed in a recorded lynchings. One of them, an African American named Henry Marbury, was accused of trying to rape a European woman and was hung in 1896. That was after the Civil War that occurred. Let me just get the, I think we can find the actual comment here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it or not, but we'll see. She's talking to one of her constituents in Lee County. Well, that is Hyde-Smith and all of her glory, and what more can we say about Hyde-Smith? Anyway, this was on a Twitter feed of Mr. Lamar White Jr., and we retweeted it, and you'll hear that comment all around the Bayou Brief. Needless, we will progress, is what he is. He's a Rice University lawyer, the last person to argue with Andrew Breitbart. So, he has his place, no doubt, in history. And if we go to the Clarion Ledger here, that's in Jackson, Mississippi. Scandals, healthcare, public hearings, and more key takeaways from the Mississippi Senate debate. Playing the tariff card, where Mississippi's Senate candidates stand on a trade. Mississippi candidates for the November special election each said they would. They've heard from numerous farmers, and they are campaigning across the state. Farmers in a $2.5 billion poultry and let's see, what, a $1.1 billion soybean, according to Sarah Wardock of the Clarion Ledger. Anyway, this is Hyde-Smith, who was forced to address the public hearing comment, no doubt about it. And Mike Espy, evidently, not only is a lawyer, but also a lobbyist. Payments that he received from the Ivory Coast. Now, that was $750,000. The president of the Ivory Coast is now at The Hague. But his work was on behalf of cocoa growers. And on our presentation numbers, man, we always go to the price of cocoa for that very reason. And it was in a free fall. And he represented not only the government at the time, that would have been, 7 years ago. But the new government, there were several contracts there. He bowed out of it, and she said, well, why didn't he give the money back? Well, nobody gives money back these days. Period. The debate was a much watched in TV for the November 22nd runoff there. Turns out to be a lackluster affair Tuesday, as neither candidate was able to break through with any single issue or message. We disagree with that. Hyde-Smith gave all kinds of dog whistles. Conservative people of Mississippi announcing the visit of DJ Trump to Mississippi, like DJ Trump was running and not her. And the conservative values, Obamacare. She attacked Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and she emphasized Obama. So in other words, this is just a racist call out. It was the most racist debate that I have covered in a very, very long time. Most of these debates, you have a few little dog whistles there. Now, I suppose if we go to Florida and the monkey business and things of that nature, that, in Georgia. So we've had a number of these debates and campaigns. We think of what happened with Kemp, a lot of voter suppression going on with Kemp. Mississippi is a state, however, that there's a very large African American population there, 30% or so of that population. That's why effective there's an African American congressional district. So that encompasses over 500 million people at the minimum. So you can see what is going on in Mississippi. And also the Democratic Party in Mississippi is an African American party. Now, the gentleman that she replaces, Hyde-Smith, the senator, he retired because of ill health. Now, when he was up against McDaniel, I think his name was McDaniel, a right-wing nut, he had to go outside the Republican Party and solicit African-American votes to get reelected. Fat Cochran was his name. And Espy invoked Fad Cochran. Both candidates, Espy talking about Mississippi first, and back to this is from the Clarion Ledger. Her appointment there, and she will serve out 2 years, so she will be up for re-election in 2020. So that infamous video out there has been running around. But in the debate, Hyde-Smith endorsed by the NRA naturally, and also some more information with her. I think we're about finished with declaring healthcare pre-existing conditions as a trick bill out there from a senator in South Carolina. Tillis, I think is his name. Anyway, effectively what it does is it would cover so-called pre-existing conditions, but if you have one, the insurance company does not have to give you coverage. So in other words, it's a double-loaded situation. It's been talked about in a lot of debates that the Republicans have tried to turn health care around. Boss Walker tried to do it in Wisconsin. Didn't work out for Boss. And Mike Espy again talking about salary inequality, or inequality here, that you have low unemployment in Mississippi as in many places, but stagnation of wage growth. And that is one of the big things that was emphasized there, period. Now, the runoff, there's a little polling, some private polling here that put Hyde-Smith ahead by about 5 points. That is to be expected. Could this turn out to a turnout election? Well, we'll see. This is by Alexander Burns and Herndon out of Jackson, Mississippi, from the New York Times. Now, this was on the 19th, just a few days ago. And it pretty much talks about some of the same things. In Jackson, in Washington, her inability to take the self-inflicted controversy in hand. There's unraveled Republicans. Your Walmart asked for their money back. And Google got caught in this trap while we're here also. that they actually donated money. And this is when you remember about these corporations. Why would they donate money to Hyde-Smith? Because Hyde-Smith is a vote for corporate interests. And these little states like Mississippi, they supply the much-needed votes there as far as big business is concerned. She gave a half-ass apology, excuse my language here, saying that she apologized to anyone that was offended. And we know anyone was offended, the African-American population and decent people of Mississippi. This is a Republican voter named Fester, said he would probably vote for Hyde-Smith. No doubt he will. And it would have helped smooth over the water. She's a rookie. If she had apologized and not given a half-baked apology there, and that is one of the big problems that come out. No Democrat, of course, has won this Senate seat since in Mississippi. Senate race since 1982. That was when Reagan was in office. So you can see how far back it has occurred. Now, a little comparison here to Roy Moore and in Alabama. Different situation with Roy Moore than there. Republicans have tried to tie a moderator, Espy, to liberals, and she made that comment. And billionaires like George Soros, I don't know, most people in Mississippi know about that. But there's been a dismissive of the backlash to her comments about hanging. This is from the government. You could expect that the abortion rate amongst African Americans was the more important on this issue, likening it to a genocide. Yeah, this is just crazy. Jordan Russell, he is the campaign manager for Hyde-Smith, predict the voters will reward her. Period. And from Senator Lott, if you remember Trent Lott, he's now 77 years old. He was forced to step down as the top Republican in the Senate. That was back in 2002 after delivering a 100-year birthday toast to 100th birthday to Strom Thurmond, the senator who is now deceased. He spoke in favor of Thurmond's 1948 run for the presidency as an avowed segregationist. He was also the father of an African-American woman, Ms. Washington. Thus, the gap has she was not malicious. How does he's lying? I'm positive. Lott said of Hyde-Smith, adding that it's caused a lot of extra criticism. There's no doubt about that. A lot of criticism there. Mike Espy, when he went into the Congress, he was in his 30s, a very young man. Now he's 64 years old. Period. He knocked doors in Jackson. Espy, who is from nearby, he's from Yazoo City, ran into residents who attended his same church, and his wife, a former barber. Oh, well. He had referred to religion in his campaign. A large section of African American voters would turn out like in 2008. That is from Jarvis Dorsch, a Democratic representative in the Jackson area, who calls the task difficult but not impossible. We're going to see the moderate, quote-unquote, white folk in Mississippi, enough for them to say that it is enough. And that is a very interesting situation. Obviously, she was talking about the visit of DJ Trump, something to bring out the people. In Jackson, of course, there you have Mr. Lumumba, the progressive mayor of the city, a rising star, rarely mentions the comments, but voters almost unanimously did. The partisan and racial cast of the special election represents stark contrast to the last time Hyde-Smith Senate seat was contested. That was in 2004. We talked about that. Mr. Cochran turned back a furious challenge that was from McDaniel by building a coalition that crossed traditional political boundaries, encouraging mainstream Republicans and African American Democrats alike to vote against McDaniel. And they did vote against McDaniel, and Cochran opened up his office to them, period. I was looking, let's see. Hyde-Smith said she's an adamant supporter who endorsed her central to her campaign, the state vet D.J. Trump. Now, D.J. Trump carried Mississippi by 18 points. I think West Virginia by 40-something points in West Virginia. That was in 2016. But Democrat groups who watched the backlash mount over the weekend since an opening on Monday at a senatorial committee sent a fundraising email out. We got one of those in for him. One of those anyway. So, as they say, the race is on. They are hurtful to millions of Mississippians who are people of goodwill. And that's basically what Espy talked about. No other state has had more of a dark history of hanging, particularly lynching of African Americans. More than 600 were killed in lynchings in Mississippi from 1877 to 1950. More than any other state. Many lynchings were not documented, and most likely making an accurate total much higher, according to scholars. And from Derek Johnson, the president of the NAACP, tied the Hyde-Smith remarks to the president, saying that he created atmosphere that normalized hateful, racist rhetoric from political candidates. There's no doubt about that. Hyde-Smith decision to joke about hanging when the history of African Americans is marred by countless incidents of this barbaric act is sick. So that's one of the things out there that can the people get to turn out? Well, if people get to turn out, it'll be very, very interesting indeed there. From the Rolling Stone, Mississippi voters can make history in yet another race about race. This is their take on it on November the 20th. Bob Moser is the person there, and just looking at it here that Espy was among the many Mississippians, both white and black, who were puzzled by this. I thought I'd heard every kind of Southern locution ever uttered, but I've never heard anyone anything about that sort of public hearing. One thing everybody in Mississippi does know, that that public hearings were euphemisms for lynchings. And that is the whole idea they're getting over. And let's see, the video shows nobody laughing at her voter suppression joke, and that African students in the picture, far from amused, demanded the photo be taken down. Now, this is another situation there. Come on, y'all, lighten up. It's okay to still have a sense of humor in America, Hyde-Smith tweeted. Bragged that after the damning video was released last week by a Louisiana blogger, we already covered him. The campaign tweet depicted the scene in a light moment with students of Mississippi State saying they'd enjoy the laugh with Sydney despite our state's social media posts trying to mislead Mississippians. The video shows nobody laughing at her voter suppression joke, and the African students in the photo far from being amused. I am disgusted, wrote J.R. Coleman, who said he'd come out to hear the senator because he's a political science major, not because he supported her, is trying to show herself in a different light by using this photo of me. We are not laughing in regard to this terrible statement. No doubt. So in other words, if you go to different sources, you find out different things, period. DeSantis, we were talking about, monkey this up. DeSantis, of course, was running in Florida for governor, and he won over our own Andrew Gillum. So this is some of what is going on here. She also visited Hyde-Smith, a Confederate war museum, and had hats on. She served in the state legislature to rename a local highway after Davis. They were told about her attempt for Jefferson Davis, and how she recently stressed the importance of electing Republicans by warning another all-white crowd, you're going to have Maxine Waters to impeach our president. Hyde-Smith got another chance to explain herself tonight, as the Mississippi Free Press, reported. The senator demanded that the press be banished from the debate. Now, this is something we had not. We perused some of these, but I mean, it gets worse and worse. Demands no audience and no press for tonight's debate. I guess she didn't want an audience. We'll have to put this up here. Hyde-Smith demanded that there be no audience or outside press allowed at tonight's debate when she faces off against, of course, Mike Espy. We have that in just a minute here. We support having an audience, and we advocate for the media to see access to the studio. That is from the Espy communications director, Danny Blyton, told the press, if she bombs, it will be a miracle. Hyde-Smith requests and was granted other accommodations. The source said a notepad, a notice to there, be at the podium for the candidate when she steps out on stage. It started a debate, but Hyde-Smith's team wanted a notepad sooner. The candidate will instead be given a notepad about an hour before the debate. Boy, this character, even the training that they gave her, hasn't helped Hyde-Smith. Members of the Mississippi Farm Bureau, which is hosting the debate, have all donated to Hyde-Smith, including the president of the Bureau, $500, and so forth and so on. The vice president, $3,500. Espy's campaign sought other options for the debate venue, and it prompted a series of free debates when it became clear that the Farm Bureau's debate was the only one. No doubt. They have rigged this for her to win. A second source, also asked not to be identified, said the debate was rigged. They have rigged the debate for her to win. The second source said Espy's campaign wanted full access of the press and a live studio audience. They said no. Espy wanted no notes going on. Instead, she and her team have time to build a crib sheet with everything she needs. And I noticed she was constantly referring to that sheet because she isn't comfortable asking whatever gotcha questions as her handlers have hooked up. Prior to that, Hyde-Smith repeatedly declined to join Espy and Republican challenger McDaniel, no doubt. On the campaign trail, the team has often sought to minimize her press exposure. Her campaign declined to have her join the Jackson Free Press for a sit-down interview, and her vanquished opponent McDaniels did. This is all part of a larger strategy to keep her completely isolated from the press and make sure that everything she says is in a controlled environment. Well, even with a controlled environment, she still stood out as an idiot. Maggie Wade, she's from WLBT. She'll be the moderator here. And then the various panelists, Bellion from the Northern Mississippi Daily Journal, and one of the writers here, Goff Pinder of the Jackson Ledger. Historic race, no matter what. Here, no doubt, Mike Espy actually running, period. If Espy wins, he'd be the first African-American senator from the state since Reconstruction, when Senator Hiram Reeves and Branch K. Bruce represented the state. That was during the period of Reconstruction. Nonetheless, DJ Trump paid a visit to Mississippi to stunt for Hyde-Smith. Will return on the 26th, the day before. So this sort of tells you that they have to double step to get Hyde-Smith in the there to get to try everything they can to get some turnout. Let me just see if I can get over here to some actual numbers. Now this was here's a chart of results of on election night. Now Hyde-Smith received 368,000 votes. That would be 41.5%. Mike Espy received 360,000 votes, also 40.6%. And McDaniel received 149,000. And another Democrat, Toby Bartrey, received 12,000 votes. So you can kind of see where these votes are here. But how many, I suppose if you looked at it, how many of these votes from McDaniel, and that was who she was trying to get, because obviously she can get a majority of the very conservative McDaniel votes. She can easily win this race. But there are only, let me my arithmetic here, roughly about 6,000 votes between them. So that is the whole idea of about a 5% lead. Now, will Mike Espy underperform or overperform? Very, very hard to say if he has a turnout. And I haven't had an opportunity to look at other races. We'll do that. I don't think we have time to to model this race, but we'll see what we can do in terms of modeling it. There's a picture of old Hyde-Smith at posing with Confederate weaponry and etc. Put it on her Facebook page. We'll put this up on Facebook. She's got a rifle there. Enjoyed my tour of wherever she was. This is Jeff Davis's home and presidential library. It's located in Biloxi. No doubt she will carry Biloxi. And for anyone's offended, that's how we'll close this out. She went on to accuse Democrats of using the comment as a weapon. This concludes our part. On to the debate held in Mississippi last night. And we'll go out of here with Mr. Willie Nelson. We'll see you later this week. In fact, tomorrow we have a special Thanksgiving program, as we normally do, and we'll look at the state of workers, particularly the working class in America. We always do this. And on Sunday we'll have a special birthday presentation. Our former partner, late great Jerry Pippin, would have been 79 years old. This is Boston Red from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. Good day.
Tuesday, November 27th. Get out to vote and let your voice be heard as to who should represent Mississippi in Washington, D.C. Good luck to both candidates, and thank you for joining us. Now here's your moderator for the evening, Maggie Wade.
Good evening and welcome to the U.S. Senate Debate 2018 with Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and Democrat Secretary Mike Espy. We have three panelists with us tonight, beginning that is with Jeff Pinder, who is with the Clarion Ledger, and WLBT's own Courtney Ann Jackson, and with the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal, Caleb Bedillion. Now, the candidates have chosen at random the order for the opening and closing statements tonight and who will take the first question. They will have 2 minutes to answer each question and 1 minute for rebuttal. Candidates may also have an additional 30 seconds to respond to some of the questions tonight. The League of Women Voters will take care of our time tonight. They will be keeping track of our time. And we want to get right to our opening statements, which will be followed by the first question tonight. We begin with Secretary Espy.
Well, thank you, Maggie. To host the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, to Maggie Wade, to our panelists, to our timekeepers, to Senator Hyde-Smith, thank you for agreeing to debate. And to the audience listening in and looking, I thank you for doing that. And also, I'll thank you for participating in this debate. And I appreciate you. And we've got Thanksgiving coming up. And we hope that you share it with your family to enjoy the Lord's bounty. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to discuss our specific approach to the issues. And I'll just tell you right off the bat, what is my approach? My approach is Mississippi first. That means that Mississippi over party, Mississippi over person. I don't care how powerful that person might be. It means Mississippi each and every time. It means that I'm not going to let anybody in the federal government run over you. When it gets to the issues, Mississippi first means that if you're a senior and you think that your Social Security and Medicaid might be threatened, if you're a student, brain drain issues, leaving Mississippi, we want you to stay here. If you are someone who is ill or infirmed, we want to make sure that that you have prescription drug costs that are going down. And if you have a pre-existing condition, we just want to make sure that you're not at risk of loss for that. In this race, everyone is talking about qualifications. I'm the most qualified candidate in this race. I ran for Congress and served 3 terms, 4 times. I served as Secretary of Agriculture. They asked about accessibility and independence. I'm accessible because I don't judge anyone. I just work with everyone, irrespective of race or party or gender. I'm going to serve you. I'm not going to judge you. And I'll be independent. Independent means you're not going to hear me say that I'm voting for anyone 100% of the time. I'm for you every % of the time. So I'm here.
And
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you for watching and listening to this debate tonight, and thank you, Farm Bureau, for putting this debate on. There's 2 other big events that will be coming up next week. On Monday night, the night before the election, on November the 26th, the President of the United States is coming to Mississippi to campaign on my behalf. We will start out in Tupelo at 5 o'clock, and then at 8 o'clock, we'll be on the beautiful Gulf Coast. I encourage you right now to go online at DonaldJTrump.com and get those free tickets. Tonight, you're going to hear the clear differences between me and my opponent on the most important issues that are facing our country right now. Throughout this campaign, I've always said, it's not about me, it is about you, the people of Mississippi, the things that are important to you. Lower taxes, less regulations, supporting our military and our veterans, protecting our unborn children, supporting our Second Amendment rights. You know, our conservative values, that's what's going to be on the ballot next Tuesday. And tonight, you're going to hear from all of these issues from 2 clear, different opinions from 2 different opponents. I think you're going to hear about 750,000 reasons why my opponent is too liberal for Mississippi. And throughout my record of public service, I've shown you one big reason to support me. That is because I've worked very hard for you. You know I will stand up and protect our conservative values. I just ask everyone to get out and vote on November the 22nd. And, you know, other than being the wife of Mike Smith, the mother of Anna Michael Smith, this has been the highest honor of my life as serving as your U.S. Senator. I hope you continue to allow me that privilege of serving you.
Now our first question comes from Jeff Pender, and it goes to Senator Hyde-Smith.
Good evening, Senator Hyde-Smith. In a state that relies heavily on agricultural exports, how long can Mississippi farmers economically cope with tariffs? And would there be a point where you would try to step in to protect farmers and maybe ask the president to reconsider?
You know, as Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce of this great state, I am well aware of all of the challenges there. I have met with the President, and I proudly support him in negotiating these trades. All the Mississippi farmers want is a fair deal, and I'm excited that the President has stepped up to renegotiate these deals so farmers can have a fair trade, level playing field that we have the advantage of, and not the imbalance of every other country having a bigger advantage than we do.
Rebuttal, Secretary Espy.
Yes, this is a wrong-headed policy by this administration. This is something that I wrote about back in March in an article, called "Be Careful What You Ask For." This president actually tried to curry favor with Ohio and Pennsylvania by putting tariffs on aluminum and steel without looking at the repercussions on soybean farmers. I've talked to soybean farmers in Mississippi. If they didn't forward contract, they're in trouble. We have some that have soybeans now just in reserve because they can't be sold, because it's too low, the prices are too low, and so they have the soybeans in reserve, and there's a 10-year low in their income. So I think this is a wrong-headed policy. We warned about it before. You have to have a senator who can see around the corner, who has a vision, and who is not tied 100% to a president who made a very poor decision.
Good evening, Secretary Espy. How can we balance the call for immigration reform and border security with the needs of farmers who rely heavily on migrant workers as a consistent supplement to their labor force?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that we have to have a strong immigration policy. We have to have secure borders, but the policy must also be humane. By that I mean I don't like open borders. I think immigration ought to be legal, and the legal aspect of immigration is asylum. So that's one thing that can happen. And so if you have an asylum petition, we don't want to snatch your children from you, but that asylum petition can be administrated to conclusion. The farmers also need migrant workers, which they could have an exception to come in to work seasonally. So that's an exception to immigration. So if they have a purpose for coming in, a valid purpose for coming in, then I think they ought to be able to do that. But anyone else cannot come at night. The borders should be secure, but the farmers ought to get what they need to bring in their crops.
Senator?
Migration workers are very important to American farmers. We see that every day. I think we should definitely build that wall. I think we have to secure our borders. We can't have people storming our borders. You know, I have been in the Rio Grande River with a bulletproof vest on, with machine guns all the way around me. I've talked to these farmers down there. I know what the severity it is of the drug cartels running that border. There is illegal access, and we certainly cannot circumvent that.
Senator Hyde-Smith, here in Mississippi and across the country, unemployment is low, but workers' paychecks aren't going up. Do you think wage stagnation is a problem, and do you support any policies that you believe can address this problem?
You know, I am so excited in supporting President Trump's tax cuts. When the corporate tax rate went from 35% to 21%, that changed this country, that changed this state. Our economy is better than it has been in decades. We have the lowest unemployment rate we have had in a long time. With these tax cuts, our businesses, they have had the opportunity to prosper, to grow, to increase wages, to improve benefits. Mississippi is enjoying President Trump's tax cuts, and they are certainly working here in this state.
Secretary Espy.
I disagree with that. You asked about wages. Wages have fallen in Mississippi about 2.2% from 2017 to 2018. So yes, we have a tax bill that was aimed at the top income bracket, but the benefits have not trickled down to those in the middle level or even lower. You know, I'm from Yazoo City, and we have a large family, 7 children, and I like to think about it in very simple terms. When my mother made jam and put it in the jelly jar, when we went to the pantry, she put it on the middle shelf where everyone can reach. My brother, 6'2", and Mike, who was the lower guy. So that's how I think about tax policy. You should provide a tax policy that provides benefits for those in the middle, then everyone can benefit.
And our next question is from Jeff.
Secretary Espy, do you support a single-payer health care system, and can you explain why or why not?
No, not really, and I don't care what you call it, but I support a healthcare system that's affordable and accessible. Now, if you look at what we have now, the Affordable Health Care Act, there are a lot of good parts of that I think that we should keep. The first one is making sure that there's coverage for pre-existing conditions. That is just absolute, and I think that's the number one issue here in Mississippi. The other one is to make sure that students can remain on their parents' policies to age 26. The other is just making sure that women aren't treated differently than men. Right now, across America, most women are discriminated in the sense that they are charged more for the same treatment than men. And then in the ACA, there was this issue about Medicaid reimbursement for small rural hospitals. And our state did not accept that, whereas most other states did. And that's why now we have all these rural hospitals in Mississippi closing, because we did not accept the Medicaid expansion money, and we have uncompensated care. So when you go to the hospital now, unfortunately, the prescription drug costs are rising, the healthcare costs are rising. As we just discussed, the wages are not rising. And so you have something left on the table that the hospital used to be able to cover with Medicaid reimbursements. It's no longer there. And so if I'm the senator, I'm going to make sure that we have Medicaid reimbursements. And I've seen Senator Hyde-Smith vote on pre-existing conditions. There was a bill in the Senate before the recess to make sure that the insurance companies told them that they could not deny coverage for policies for pre-existing conditions, and she voted against it. If I'm the senator, I'm going to vote for it.
Senator, rebuttal.
I want to repeal Obamacare. I'm for free market solutions. I have never voted for a bill that excluded pre-existing conditions. You know, I don't know anyone who doesn't have a pre-existing condition. Everything that we will support, I assure you, will include pre-existence conditions. Obamacare, which has been a disaster for health care, ruined rural America. My opponent supports that. He also supports a taxpayer-funded health care policy for illegal aliens that are not even American citizens. Mississippi cannot afford that, and I would never support anything like that.
Mr. Espy, did you want additional response?
Yeah, because that's not exactly right. She's looking at a vote that I made 20 years ago, and that's all right. The thing about that particular bill is that all hospitals must give emergency care to whoever comes in, whether they're illegal aliens or not. They must do it. So my vote in that respect was just making sure that the Medicaid reimbursements, as I said before, will be provided for rural hospitals when they gave the care to the individual. Would you want them to come in and be responsible?
And I'm sorry, Mr. Espy. I'm sorry, time. Courtney Ann Jackson has the next question.
Senator Hyde-Smith, the video in which you reference a public hanging has received national criticism and attention. You have released a statement in which you say that any attempt to turn it into a negative connotation is ridiculous. What is the positive connotation, and are you willing to explain and or apologize tonight?
You know, at a campaign event, I had the opportunity to visit with a supporter who has a big piece of my heart. See, his mother and dad both died of cancer when he was in high school. So to express my deep regard and my sincere commitment to this young man, I used a phrase. I told him that I would fight a circle saw for him. Well, obviously, I would not stick my arm in a circle saw, nor did any of my comments ever mean that I would enjoy any type of capital punishment sitting there witnessing this. You know, for anyone that was offended by my comments, I certainly apologize. There was no ill will, no intent whatsoever in my statements. In nearly 20 years of service, of being your state senator, your commissioner of agriculture, and your U.S. senator, I have worked with all Mississippians. It didn't matter their skin color type, their age, or their income. That's my record. There has never been anything, not one thing in my background to ever indicate I had ill will toward anyone. I've never been hurtful to anyone. I've always tried to help everyone. I also recognize that this comment was twisted and it was turned into a weapon to be used against me, a political weapon used for nothing but personal and political gain by my opponent. That's the type of politics Mississippians are sick and tired of.
Mr. Espy, Secretary Espy.
Well, no one twisted your comments because your comments were live. It came out of your mouth. And I don't know what's in your heart, but we all know what came out of your mouth. And it went viral, within the first 3 minutes around the world. And so it's caused our state harm. It's given our state another black eye that we don't need. It's just rejuvenated the old stereotypes, that we don't need anymore. And we have companies like Walmart that wrote you today and told you that your comments did not reflect the values of that company.
Would you like rebuttal?
I've
Senator.
never intended any ill will toward anyone with any of my comments. It was never there. My comments were taken and twisted and used as a political weapon against me by my opponent, and that is just wrong. It is unfortunate, and that's the type of politics Mississippians are tired of.
Caleb, you have our next question.
Secretary Espy,
Yes.
you resigned your cabinet post and were later criminally charged over allegations that you accepted improper gifts. A jury found you not guilty of any criminal wrongdoing, but do you regret anything you did, and do you think it's appropriate for cabinet officials to accept gifts from the private industries those officials help create policy for?
The allegations against me were unfair, and I said in the very beginning that these things are not true, and we went to a 4-year investigation, and the FBI, after the 4-year investigation, said that I had not given any favors to any companies not regulated. And then during my trial, that was a 7-week trial. They spent $26 million, and I was completely exonerated by a jury. And then later, in a Supreme Court case that's related to my case, Justice Antonin Scalia reported me the most thoughtful, certainly the most conservative Supreme Court justice at that time, ruled in a case 9-0 that the prosecution of Mike Espy was overwrought and was de minimis, and it should not have happened.
Senator?
There's been a lot of shadows cast over my opponent. Just recently, you have read in the newspapers where he has received $750,000 from a foreign dictator who is right now this week on trial for crimes against humanity. Those crimes include murder, rape, and unspeakable things to young girls. He has taken $750,000 from this. I don't know how many Mississippians can really relate to an income that could command a $750,000 check from one person for a lobbying job. If I got paid $750,000 for one 12-week job, Macedonia Baptist Church in Brookhaven, Mississippi, they would love that type. But there's been a lot of clouds there, and that is fact, that he was paid $750,000 from a
Your
foreign
time is
dictator.
up. I'm sorry, Senator. Mr. Espy, or Secretary Espy, would you like to respond? You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I've worked all over the world to lift incomes of farmers. In this case, lift the incomes of cocoa farmers in the Ivory Coast. I went there and took this assignment because they asked me to do it. Under contract to the Cocoa Commission of the Ivory Coast. I found out later that this guy, the president, was a really bad guy. I resigned the contract, and I rescinded the last fee that I was due. And then I went to the Central Intelligence Agency after I had learned certain things and reported them. So it's all in that report.
Your time is concluded. Thank you. Let's go on with our next question. Jeff.
Thank you. Senator Hyde-Smith, is there a balance that should be struck between Second Amendment rights and gun control in the wake of recent mass shootings?
This is a big difference between my opponent and I. I am a lifetime member of the NRA. I've been endorsed by the NRA, and certainly school violence is a terrible thing. That is about mental health. That is about looking for signs prematurely for something happening and addressing them. But as your U.S. Senator, I will always protect your Second Amendment rights, and we can address school shootings issues with law enforcement. If they want to put guns in schools, we certainly have to work with law enforcement, but leave that up to the local school districts to make that decision. But I am very firm on my right to protect myself, my right to protect my family, you will never see me waver on a vote that attacks the Second Amendment. My opponent has already voted to attack the Second Amendment. You know, he was in Congress. It's been a quarter of a century ago that he was in Congress, but I assure you those things have not changed. When he gets there, if he were to get there, he would vote with Chuck Schumer 100% of the time, just like he did when he was there a quarter of a century ago. He is trying to come across modest, or he's trying to come across as being a moderate. He is nothing of a moderate. When it comes to Second Amendment rights, I will be the U.S. Senator to protect you. My opponent will not.
Secretary Espy.
Well, I don't know who she's talking about. I'm staying right here. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to own and bear arms. I own pistols and shotguns in my home, taught my wife and son how to shoot. And so, you know, 20 years ago when I voted, I believe my record on the Second Amendment was pretty good, 98%. Now, I will say to you that because of mass shootings and because of what's happened in the intervening years, my thinking, in a way, has evolved in this way. Number one, if you're on the no-fly list, if you can't even get on a plane, then you probably shouldn't own a gun without careful vetting. And the second way is that we need more vetting for that. And she's 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Courtney Ann Jackson.
This question for Secretary Espy. Yes. Mississippi educators are struggling with issues like a lack of broadband access and a teacher shortage. What is your plan to help leverage federal resources to improve Mississippi's education system, whether directly or indirectly?
Well, directly, there are a number of things that we can do. We can make sure that the MAEP is fully funded. That is certainly, more of a state function. But as a senator, I can make sure that we can put more Title I monies in the public schools. And then you talk about rural broadband funding. A lot of that money is given through USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and the Rural Utility Service that I used to head in a way. So there are lots of grants there, there are lots of loans there to increase capacity for broadband access in rural schools.
Senator?
I certainly believe in school districts having local control. We need to get the federal government out of the school districts. We need to let the local people have the control over those school districts because they can make their decisions the best. We all want good educations for our children. We all support that. I don't know of anyone who does not. But the federal government has had a heavy hand in education in Mississippi public schools for way too long. We can certainly support them with our federal dollars. Broadband is very important. I have enjoyed working with our farmers and ranchers also on broadband expansion, and that would help our schools as well. But I certainly say, federal government, you need to stay out of Mississippi when it comes to policies. We know better than the federal government on. Common Core was a disaster. There's so many issues that we certainly need to leave at a local district and let Mississippians decide upon. Put the parents and teachers and the administration in charge of that.
You're watching the U.S. Senate Debate 2018. We will be back after these messages. Stay with us. Of our U.S. Senate Debate 2018, and our next question will come from Caleb Bedillion.
This question is for Senator Hyde-Smith. Across the country, we've seen increasingly bipartisan support for a variety of criminal justice system reforms, including alternate sentencing, reduced minimum sentencing, and there is federal legislation with bipartisan sponsors pending before the Senate on this issue. Are there any proposed criminal justice reforms that you support?
I'll tell you, first of all, I want everybody to understand that I support law enforcement. I don't support criminals. I think that there is time to take a look at the reform. I understand that there are many bills out there. And, there is some common sense reforms that can be done. There's two kinds of prisoners, in my opinion. One is the kind you're mad at, some young kid that did something stupid. The other is the one that you're scared of. we have a place for those that you're scared of. We can certainly take a look at revisiting these issues, and I've had so many law enforcement asking for that, but I support the law enforcement 100% of the time. You know, my opponent is not for building the wall. He is not for securing our borders, and over 90% of the heroin that comes to this country is coming from Mexico. That's a pretty clear answer of where the problem lies. When we secure that border, when we build that wall, we can take control much better than we can right now. My opponent is too liberal for Mississippi. He is too liberal for law enforcement, and we need to build the wall and secure that, because so many of our problems is the reason we're locking so many people up are related to our opioid crisis. Mississippi is in the center of that opioid crisis. We need to do something about it, but only when law enforcement works hand in hand on any type of prison reform that I would look at seriously voting for, to make sure that we're on the same page, that it's things that work. We have great law enforcement in Mississippi, and you know, we lead the country in many areas, such as drug court. Drug court has reduced the recidivism rate in so many counties in Mississippi. It has been so successful. We have been the poster child for many other states in Mississippi, like drug court. We have a lot of our own solutions, and we will continue to find that and stand firm against
I'm so sorry.
criminals.
Your time is up. I'm sorry. Secretary Espy.
Well, she's right. I'm not for the wall. The wall is very impractical. The wall will cost $70 billion if fully built, 2,000 miles on the southern border. I believe in our country. I believe in the value of our technology. We have drones. We have surveillance devices. There are any number of other ways that we can detect illegals coming across the border rather than building a wall that I believe would never be built. But your question was about reform in the prisons. I'm aware of the bill that you're referring to. You know, we have a lot of people in prison that ought to be there for violent crimes. We have also many that shouldn't be there for 20 or 30 years because they're drug crimes, they're non-violent crimes. We ought to give them some options to leave and go back to the society in a responsible way.
Our next question comes from Jeff Pender.
Secretary Espy, if elected to the U.S. Senate, how accessible will you be to constituents and media back home?
100%. You know, if I say that I'm going to do something 100% of the time, it would be that. You know, the thing about me is that I don't judge anyone. You know, I just have to serve everyone. It's up to the Lord to judge between this one and that one. It's just up to me to serve everyone. So I've said in all of my speeches and in my offices before as a member of Congress and as Secretary of Agriculture, I will serve you irrespective of race, irrespective of party, irrespective of gender, religion, sexual orientation, whatever it is. If it's veterans issues or healthcare issues, it just doesn't matter. I'm going to be there 100% of the time. I think the media serves a constitutional purpose. You know, that's in the First Amendment. That's why it's number one in the First Amendment. And I certainly believe that I will, anytime you want me at a press conference, anytime you want me answering a question, anytime you ask me to come to the podium, I'm not going to stand back after asking me 6 times for an explanation or clarification. I'm going to be there the first time. You know, I thought that was awful, what she did at that press conference the other day. And that's why I'm independent. Nobody tells me where to stand, what to say, how to speak, how to vote. That's why I believe in Mississippi first, 100% of the time.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
I'm right now very accessible to my constituents. I have a long history in public service. I have always been accessible to my constituents. You know, my opponent voted to gut the military. When I come back and I talk to veterans about the assistance that they need, they know that I'm with them 100% of the time. My opponent also opposes just about anything Trump. If he is elected, he will vote with Chuck Schumer 100% of the time. When he was in Congress nearly a century ago, he voted the Democratic line straight down more than 90%. You know, he wants health care for illegal aliens that aren't even U.S. citizens. So when I come back to Mississippi and I talk to my constituents, They know that I'm addressing them. Their needs come first for me, and I'm very proud of the record that I have with my consistent, continued communication with my local constituents.
Secretary Espy, 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, Maggie. The thing is that, all of these attacks are all prompted because of her vote against pre-existing conditions. I mean, the Democrats had a bill there that told insurance companies that they could not deny coverage based on pre-existing conditions, and she voted against that. And the bill failed by one vote. If I had been in the Senate, that bill would have passed, and we could all sleep at night knowing that we did not have to negotiate with the insurance companies based on coverage of that pre-existing condition.
Time.
Senator Hyde-Smith, you're on record as saying that any health care plan should include coverage of pre-existing conditions. Are there any other rules of the Affordable Care Act that you do not think should be scrapped?
I strongly believe in the pre-existing conditions, and that is the reason I'm going to co-sponsor right now with a bill with Senator Tom Tillis. So we know that anything we do would have to have anybody that has a condition right now that is pre-existing. You know, Obamacare is the worst thing that happened to us. Obamacare took $100 billion out of Medicare. Look what that did to our seniors. And yes, there is many things that I believe in that would help the health care and keep these rural hospitals from closing. First of all is end Obamacare, but free market opportunities of insurance companies being able to sell across state lines, that is vital to the health care of Mississippi. That is vital for the reimbursements, for the physicians that are trying to get reimbursed. Hospitals, when we have a good economy, a thriving economy, there's more people with jobs who can afford health care and have jobs that offer health care. They're not stuck with ungodly bills that people cannot afford to pay. That's the reason that I support President Trump and his tax cuts and in creating an environment that businesses can prosper. Because when we have a healthy economy, our hospitals do well too. But we cannot stand another day of Obamacare that takes $100 billion out of Medicare.
Secretary Espy.
She mentioned the bill with Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina. I've read that bill. I read it this morning. I read it thoroughly. And what she said is really not true. You know, she supported the bill, but the bill is a sham bill because it says that you can they will cover individuals with pre-existing conditions, but it will not cover the pre-existing condition. So I have a pre-existing condition. I have a raspy voice. So under what she just said, this Tom Tillis bill, yeah, I can get covered, but when I have an injection in my throat, I have to fight with the insurance company to cover the practice. So what she said there was a sham. That's incorrect. And what she said earlier about supporting pre-existing conditions was also incorrect.
Senator, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
The bill that I am co-sponsoring with Senator Tom Thompson from South Carolina, the reason we put that bill together is because I am so concerned about patients out there that have pre-existing conditions that they cannot get coverage because of that. That needs to come to an end. You will never see anyone fight as hard for patients to have more affordable health care, easier access to health care, especially our veterans, but to have insurance offering that is not Obamacare.
Your time is up. Caleb Bedelia, the next question.
Secretary Espy,
Yes.
When President Trump was a candidate, he discussed the need for some sort of federal infrastructure plan.
Yes.
Since he's taken office, we've seen several ideas floated, including a plan that would require state matching funds, and even the idea of some sort of federal gas tax increase has been discussed. Do you think those proposals are ideas that could help Mississippi's infrastructure, a state which struggles to maintain its roads and bridges?
Yes, I read the president's infrastructure plan, but it was faulty in this sense. There was a copay. Now, I'm familiar with a copay, conventional copay, where the states have a smaller copay requirement and the federal government has a larger copay requirement. In the one that President Trump initiated, there was an 80-20 split. And I thought, the 20 would be the local and the 80 would be the federal. But it was completely reversed. It was 80% match local and 20% 80% match federal. Now, I've been the attorney for Madison County. I've been the attorney for Claiborne County. There's no two counties that are opposite than those two counties. Neither county can afford to fix their roads and bridges and their potholes under that kind of system where you have an 80% match. I think the gas tax issue would be something that could be considered.
Senator.
You know, infrastructure is so critical in Mississippi. We're a hub for many transportations, just like the Mississippi River, the Gulf Coast, the interstates that we have. No, I would not support a gas tax. I can assure you that. I think that we have many other ways of taking care of this problem, but it must be addressed. But you know, I am concerned about bridges and roads, the safety of our travelers. I'm concerned about all Mississippians. I'm concerned about, obviously, those we've talked about with health care. There's a story that just broke today where my opponent discriminated against an employee because they had a child with a pre-existing health care need. And my opponent was taken, it was a charge against the EEOC, and the individual won. And my opponent was guilty of taking advantage and not promoting an employee because of a pre-existing health care. I care about all Mississippians.
Secretary Espy, your response. 30 seconds, please.
I just learned about this article before we came here today. I think it's ridiculous, this one. I was Secretary of Agriculture. This was an employee. This employee had multiple lawsuits. I did not deny anyone's pre-existing condition. I never have, unlike you, and I never will. So go and read that. That's ridiculous.
Jeff Pender.
Senator Hyde-Smith, this campaign cycle, like others in the past, we've seen millions of dollars in negative ads come in from independent parties. Do we need campaign finance reform in this country of any sort?
Mississippi has already passed campaign finance reform. And you know, looking through that, we are so careful on absolutely everything, on documenting every campaign contribution that comes in. I think the campaign finance reforms that we had in Mississippi were good. I think that the law is being applied. You know, unlike my opponent that doesn't care that much for Mississippians, evidently because of his liberal views on Mississippi, to think that he has been hired by a foreign dictator to the tune of $750,000 to be paid. And this man this week is on trial for crimes against humanity. Those include murder, those include rape, those are including unspeakable things to small children. It is amazing that we've got somebody running for the U.S. Senate that took $750,000 from a foreign dictator off of an Ivory Coast, and who also, in his own words just then, there was a complaint filed against him by the EEOC that he lost because he failed to give a promotion to a gentleman that had a small little girl with a pre-existing condition. I care about Mississippians. I care about campaign finance reform. I care about everything in state government. That's the reason my name is on the ballot next Tuesday. I want to be the senator that protects your conservative values and not allow someone into Washington, D.C. and the U.S. Senate, where I've been serving for 6 months, that is going to vote with Chuck Schumer all of the time. We have conservative values at stake here. I plan to protect those conservative values at stake. I'm the one that has been doing that. I'm the one that has a proven track record of conservative values. We cannot let a liberal come in and roll back all the good things that we have been doing with President Donald J. Trump.
Sorry. Secretary Espy.
I thought the issue was about campaign finance reform. On this issue again about the gentleman at USDA, I want to let you know that was 1992. I wasn't Secretary of Agriculture until 1993, 1994. So whatever case that was just transferred to my name as Secretary of Agriculture, and that's ridiculous. The questions about campaign finance reform. You know, I am an advocate of a campaign finance reform. It is so expensive to run for office. I hadn't run for office in quite a while. The television costs money. The placards cost money. And I'm fortunate in that we've done pretty well, particularly since her defamatory comments that everyone knows that went viral. But the thing is, there's an average contribution to the Mike Espy campaign of $38. So all those liberals that she's talking about, they gave me $38.
Our next question comes from Courtney Ann Jackson.
Secretary Espy, you've mentioned building bridges between the two parties, reaching across the aisle. Can you name a specific instance or policy where you would be ready to reach across the aisle to fellow senators if elected?
Yeah, of course. I've already done it. I was a member of Congress in 1986, and the first bill that I filed, that I wrote myself, was called the Lower Mississippi Delta Development Act. It was an economic development act from southern Illinois to northern Louisiana. We just drew an oval around them because all of them had a common socioeconomic index. Low job skills, low educational attainment, job losses. And so it was up to me to sell that bill. So I got the bill passed in the House of Representatives. It passed Republicans and Democrats. Then I went across the aisle to the U.S. Senate, and Thad Cochran co-signed that bill for me, co-sponsored that bill. And I talked to senator after senator, irrespective of party, and that bill passed. And then I went to the White House, where Ronald Reagan was the president, and Ronald Reagan signed that bill, the Mike Espy written bill, in 1987, the Lower Mississippi Delta Development Act. So I've got a long history of doing that. I was 31 years then. I'm 64 years old now, and I'm grayer, I'm more mature, and I'll reach out even further.
Senator.
Absolutely, but only if it's good for Mississippians. I work across the aisle. I was known for that in the state senate. In my 3 terms as state senator when I was there, I was known for working across the aisle with everybody. We're all God's children, and I treat everybody like that, but only if it's good for Mississippians. With things that matter, you bet I would work across that aisle all day long if it's good for Mississippi. For those that are not good for Mississippi's, I will not be there with them. I will oppose them and do the things that I'm supposed to do to be the U.S. Senator from the great state of Mississippi, protecting our Mississippians.
Well, tonight the candidates have also chosen to ask each other a question. I will be reading those questions, and I will be reading them verbatim. The first question goes to Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith from Secretary Espy. Cindy, you said that you had not cast a single vote that would allow insurers to discriminate against Mississippians with pre-existing conditions. But in October, you voted against a resolution which would have prevented insurers from selling short-term junk plans that can do just that. Did you know what you were voting for, or did you lie?
Absolutely, I knew what I was voting for, and that was not a single bill, that was a plan. I have never voted against anyone with pre-existing conditions to be excluded from a policy. Go read the bill. It is clearly there. That is the brush that I'm being painted with right now. Go read the bill. I have never voted for a bill that just exclusively says pre-existing conditions are not part of that and never would. That's the reason I am a co-sponsor right now with Senator Tom Tillis to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered. I have been like that my entire career because, as I said, I don't really know anyone who doesn't have a pre-existing condition. When you look at that bill, you can read it and twist it the way you want, but it clearly lets you know that I have never voted for a single bill that excludes any type of pre-existing condition.
Mr. Espy, Secretary Espy, it's come to light in recent news stories that you worked as a registered foreign agent for the country Ivory Coast, and you were paid $750,000 by its dictator, who's now on trial for war crimes, including torture, rape, and murder. Will you now finally agree to give that $750,000 to a charitable organization who would improve the lives of people in war-torn countries like Ivory Coast and around the world?
Well, thank you. I can finally answer this question without a 30-second rebuttal. I work all over the world lifting farmer incomes in Eastern Europe, in America here, and in Africa, all over Africa. This particular case was in the Ivory Coast where the cocoa farmers asked me to come over. I worked for the Ivory Coast Cocoa Commission because the cocoa prices were in a free fall because there was an election and there was fraud on both sides, and the price of cocoa beans going through the cellar. So they asked me to come over and take a contract where I could try to lift those prices. And then they asked me to work with this particular president that you're referring to. So I took that contract, and I hired others to help me execute that contract. The thing about it, that once I got into it, I found out really how bad the guy was. I really did. And so I wrote him, I resigned, I terminated that contract, and there was a contract extension that had already been agreed to that I forfeited. And then, during the course of that contract, I learned things that I thought that the intelligence services of the United States would be interested in. So I called them. I flew to Washington. I talked to the director of the Central Intelligence Agency about the things I had found, and that is a report there. And then, thirdly, I went and met with the new president, Mr. Ouattara, and we talked also again about the contract, and so this thing has been fully briefed. That question comes because, again, the senator is obfuscating her record on pre-existing conditions. What she just said is not true. She voted against a bill that would tell the insurance companies they could not deny coverage for pre-existing conditions. She voted against that. And the bill failed by one vote. And then this Tillis bill says that you can cover the individual, but not the pre-existing condition. What you said is not true.
At this point of our debate, it's time for closing statements from each of our candidates. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and Secretary Espy. Will begin with the senator.
Thank you so much for staying tuned tonight and watching this debate. Again, next week there's two big important events coming up. We will have the President of the United States to come to Mississippi to campaign on my behalf. We're going to start off in Tupelo at 5 o'clock the Monday before the election on the 26th. We will end up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast at 8 o'clock. Right now, you can go to DonaldJTrump.com and get those tickets. Tonight, you have heard two clearly different, opposite differences between me and my opponent. We have talked about the issues that this country is facing and the things that you're involved in. Throughout this campaign, I've always said, this is not about me. It is about you, the Mississippians. It's about the things that you care for, the things that you believe in, like lower taxes, less government, less regulation, supporting our military and our veterans. It is about protecting our unborn children. It's about abortion. It is the things that I will stand up for and fight against. My opponent has already gone on record to be pro-abortion, abortion on demand. There is a clear difference between the two of us. You know, we have conservative values. That's what's going to be on the ballot next Tuesday, and I covet everyone's vote. I am so glad that I have the endorsement of President Donald J. Trump and the endorsement of Governor Phil Bryant. But the endorsement that's most important to me, that's most valued, would be your vote next Tuesday, November the 22nd. I ask you to go out. We have way too much at stake. This is a critical election, the most critical election in my lifetime, and it's not just because I'm on the ballot. We have to defend our conservative values. We have to defend our Second Amendment rights. We have to defend the unborn children in Mississippi. I'm the candidate that cares. I'm the candidate that has been there 6 months. I'm the candidate that Donald J. Trump has said,
I am so
Cindy,
sorry,
we
Senator.
need you back.
Thank you. Your time is up. Closing statements now from Secretary Espy.
Well, thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Senator Hyde-Smith, and thank you to all the panelists and to our viewing audience for viewing this debate tonight. Washington is broken. There's so much dysfunction, division, acrimony, cynicism, politicians turning on each other rather than to each other. We need someone to come in there with a common influence to try to lift us above all the noise and to try to reach across the chasm to bring all Mississippians of goodwill together for a common purpose. And I really believe that I can do that. I've done it all my life. I've done it as a member of Congress, elected 3 times, elected to a 4th term. Before then, I became Secretary of Agriculture. I ended up getting, in 1992, 95% of the black vote and 40% of the white vote. Here in this debate tonight, a lot of names have been slung around, but there's one that we must mention. That's Thad Cochran, we wish him well tonight because we're all trying to run for the unexpired portion of his seat. Thad Cochran was a thoughtful man. Thad Cochran was a professional. Thad Cochran was very efficient. I would hope to be the kind of senator that Thad Cochran is. And then lastly, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith made thoughtless comments that harmed our state and hurt our jobs and hurt our economy. You got companies like Walmart, who today said that her comments did not reflect the values of their company, and they do not reflect the values of our state. And we got a senator here talking about public hangings and talking about voter suppression. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going back to yesteryear. We want to move forward. That's the kind of senator that I want to be. Not talking about harbingers of the past, voter suppression and hangings. We want to talk about great things like progress. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. The election is on the 27th. Please come out. Please vote Mike Espy for Senate. I'll be the best senator you've ever had.
At this time, we want to thank both of you, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith and Secretary Mike Espy. And we also want to thank all of you for joining us tonight for the U.S. Senate Debate 2018. Thank you to our panelists, Jeff Pender with Clarion Ledger, Courtney Ann Jackson with WLBT, as well as Caleb Nadillian with the Daily Journal. And we want to remind you that the runoff election is Tuesday, November 27th. Remember, the polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 7 p.m. We've talked about a number of issues tonight, from education to infrastructure. We've also talked about the economy. We've talked about jobs. We've talked about the people of Mississippi, including farmers. And again, we hope that you have listened. We hope that you have enjoyed this debate. We hope you've learned from this debate. And again, we want to thank you so much for being with us this evening.